You're in for a great episode tonight as we have an author that inspired me, and he's going to talk about a player that inspired him. Vincent Genovese joins us, and it's up right after this.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And boy, do we have a great episode for you tonight. We're going to talk to one of the authors that influenced Jeff and I when we wrote our book, Marooned. It's a great resource. I got to meet this gentleman just a few weeks ago, and we're going to talk a little bit about his book and about a person he thinks should be in the Hall of Fame. His name is Vince Genovese. Vince, welcome to the Pig Pen.
Good to be here.
Yeah, Vincent, first, maybe you could tell us about your Pottsville book. First of all, why don't you give us a title and where folks can get a copy?
Well, the title of my book, which came out in 2009, and it was around the same time that Dave Fleming had his, and I believe it was called The Breaker Boys.
Yes.
His took a different approach than mine. Mine was more of a historical approach, okay? And the title of mine was The Pottsville Maroons and the NFL Stolen Championship of 1925. Because in Pottsville, that's what they claim, that the championship was stolen. Maybe a quick run through what happened.
Sure.
According to my research, was in 1925, Doc Striegel bought an NFL franchise for $500. He put together a team, and the doctor was a wise man. He raided some other teams. He got some All-American college players, and he got some local people who were good athletes, including even two that were coal miners, okay? So he put the team together. First two games, they won handily. The third game was up in Providence, and it was a washout, terribly muddy field, raining. The game was nothing but fumble after fumble. And unfortunately, near the end of the game, a fumble was picked up by the Providence team, and they scored a touchdown, and Pottsville ends up losing 6-0. They later got revenge on that one because they won their next 5 games in a row and blanked everybody, shut them out, and they ended up, including Providence, so they ended up playing Frankfurt, and Frankfurt beat them. That was their second loss. And at that point, it looked like their chances for the championship were starting to wane, okay? They basically had to win every game they played, okay? The next 3 games in particular, within 7 days, and it was right around Thanksgiving. And they were up to the task because they beat last year's NFL champions. The team, I'm losing my memory there.
Well, Canton, I believe.
The Canton Bulldogs.
Okay. Cleveland Bulldogs, I guess they were at that point.
And they played Cleveland and beat them too. And they beat Green Bay. And then they came back and they beat Frankfurt, okay? So now they were in the driver's seat, and the commissioner, Joe Carr, ordered them to go out to Chicago and play the Chicago Cardinals for the championship. So Pottsville hops on a train and takes practically a full day ride out to Chicago. And the next day, they played Chicago. 18 degrees, 30-mile-an-hour wind, snow coming horizontally in off the lake, the original ice bowl, I think. And they actually humbled the Cardinals and beat them. And the next day it was in every newspaper in the country, Pottsville wins the NFL championship. So a few days later, Pottsville played an exhibition game down in the Philadelphia area against the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame and a team of college all-stars. And people have to keep in mind that during that era, college football was considered superior to professional football. So this was quite a matchup. And anyway, the commissioner warned Doc Striegel 3 times, do not play this game, okay, because you're in somebody else's territory. And Doc Striegel, he wouldn't listen. And of course, it's speculation whether he was that bound by his agreement to play this team, signed a contract, etc. Or there's also rumors that he was bleeding money from all the players that he, took from other teams and paid them more than actually what the NFL was allowing you to pay. He was picking up all the expenses for the team by himself. But anyway, he went ahead and he played the game. And they actually, at halftime, got a telegram from Commissioner Carr telling them that they are no longer in the NFL and they're no longer champions. Okay. So they went out the second half and pulled it together, and they beat this Four Horsemen college all-star team and defeated them. A last-minute field goal by Charlie Berry, a member of the Maroons. And basically, since then, Pottsville has been fighting to get that championship back. They were saying they were robbed. It wasn't fair, okay? What happened next was there was a meeting, and well, I guess I should back up just to the actual season in the NFL wasn't over until December 20th, okay? So in the interim from playing that game to December 20th, just about anything could happen. Teams could schedule more games if they wanted or whatever. But Pottsville basically was champion for 6 days until they got that telegram from the commissioner, okay? So in my book, I argue sort of down the middle. I argue why many people think it was unfair that they were stripped of the championship. And I also give, I wouldn't say argue, but I give facts that show how maybe they did get mistreated, okay? And I'll just briefly point out a couple of them.
Sure.
In the beginning, when Joe Carr got rid of him, he was the commissioner, okay? So he had the ultimate power to do what he wanted. And there was an unwritten rule about invading someone else's territory, okay? But it was not in writing, but it was understood, okay, that you didn't do that. And by the time the season ended, Pottsville was no longer in the NFL, right? They had been booted out. So they really don't have much of a case. However, on the other hand, since there was nothing in writing, it was just a spoken rule, that could have meant anything, okay? And Doc Striegel met with the commissioner with his brother George, who was an attorney, to try and plead their case, okay? And Joe Carr would not back down. But the one thing that is a little unfair is, okay, they invaded someone's territory, so they must be punished. But was the punishment appropriate? Okay. I mean, sometimes teams get fined, sometimes they get have to forfeit a game. But this, he literally threw them out of the NFL. Okay, which a lot of people are saying that it's a pretty radical punishment. Okay, was that justified? And it goes back to the old adage, of course, of what happens on the field should never be changed by what happens off the field. Okay,
Correct.
on the field, in a fair game, Pottsville, pretty much destroyed the Cardinals and were the champs. So how can you take that away from them when the next thing that happened, was had nothing to do. They were miles away from Chicago. They were in Philadelphia, right? So, in a way, Doc Striegel has to bear some responsibility for what happened. And on the other hand, the commissioner appeared to have acted arbitrarily and a little too severe, okay, for the circumstances. Bottom line, at the team meeting, there were 17 teams in the NFL that year. There was a real brouhaha, from what I found in the research, between the owners. And at one point, they thought they might have to call the cops to calm people down. But they finally settled everybody down. And I believe the last motion, okay, which was carried, was to not name a champion that year, okay? Now, a little later on, Pottsville was reinstated into the NFL, okay? And they had to pay Frankfurt a fine of $2,500. And, everything was supposedly hunky-dory then after that, okay? Now, when Pottsville was reinstated, I believe most people believe that meant the championship too, right? But they didn't award one that night. And lo and behold, in the 30s, the Cardinals ended up claiming that championship. And much to the dismay of the Pottsville Maroons, they said, well, there was no champion that year. If anybody, it was Pottsville. How can you claim to it? So there's been an ongoing fight for 100 years now with the NFL to try and get back that stolen championship.
Yeah, very, very well said. It was quite a event that happened 100 years ago. And just a few weeks ago, August 16th, you and I and a whole room full of others all gathered in Pottsville, and they celebrated this 1925 team. And that's where you and I got to meet face to face. Yeah, great.
A very nice banquet that we attended, and they had several speakers there, former NFL players, and of course there was some good discussions back and forth about who was right, who was wrong here. I think both sides need to share a little bit of the responsibility. The important thing that I hope comes out of this at some point is that maybe the best running back, and this includes Jim Brown, okay, in the NFL, was a man named Tony Latone on the Pottsville Maroons team. His stats are unbelievable. His stats are even better than Red Grange's, okay? And Red Grange once asked at a banquet who was the toughest guy you ever played against. And he didn't hesitate for a second. He said, Tony Latone from the Pottsville Maroons. He was called the human howitzer, and he had worked in the mines, came out of the mines and, had a tryout for the Pottsville Maroons, and Doc Striegel took one look at him and said, "There's my running back right there. Okay, sign him up." And I would hope that someday he would find his way into the Hall of Fame, because he truly was an outstanding running back, and it just seems a little unfair. I suspect because he literally came out of the coal mines, okay, and had no pedigree. I mean, he wasn't from Notre Dame or Michigan or Penn State,
Right.
what have you. He was a coal miner, okay, and I think he got overlooked, sort of snubbed, maybe a little bit of haughtiness on the NFL side. They may not like that comment, but it does cross my mind from time to time. Okay, he was nominated. Okay, but he, of course, was not voted in, and to this day, it's still one of the things that many people in Pottsville, wish would happen, even if they don't get the championship back, is to at least get Tony Latone where he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Uh, I couldn't agree with you more. Very deserving person. Hopefully, we'll see that bronze bust standing there in Canton, and a family member of his will get a gold jacket to take home. That would be very just to have that. But I want to commend you on your book. Like I said, Jeff Payne and I, as we were writing the book Marooned, we sort of went historical Pottsville all the way back to the beginning of their football, and sort of took it forward and covered, not only covered the seasons when they played, but we covered sort of the aftermath with the Zacco family trying to bring this
Mhm.
championship back, and petitioning, governors of Pennsylvania and some NFL teams supporting them the whole way through. And so, but your book was one of the things, along with Mr. Fleming's book, Breaker Boys, that we referenced a lot, along with old newspapers. But I love the approach. I went into writing the book. I'm from the other side of the corner of the state. I'm from Erie, so 5-hour drive down to Pottsville, and I didn't know much about Pottsville other than I knew about the championship from reading your book and reading Fleming's book. But just getting into the story, I said, I don't really care who's right or who's wrong. I just want to try to get to the bottom of it, see, what really happened here. And your book gave a very nice account, just like you said. You sat sort of on the fence and gave both sides. You didn't throw opinion into it, just gave the facts. And that was really a refreshing story to read. And I highly recommend for folks to want to read about this and get some good insight. I think your book was very genuine in that. So nice
And
job.
thank you very much for those kind words. Uh, and I was almost remiss until you mentioned it. Joe Zacco was the driving force in trying to get that championship back, okay? And right up till when he passed away, okay? He spent every waking moment contacting the NFL, contacting Canton Hall of Fame, contacting owners of teams, doing everything he could, to get them to see that, hey, Pottsville, should have that championship.
In the reunions that he was putting together, get these former players while they were still alive and able to come to, they gathered in Pottsville a few times to celebrate their team. It was so good.
Yeah,
So this is a
yeah,
real brotherhood these guys had.
yeah. And I think they deeply appreciated what he tried to do. Um, and there were 3 attempts basically, okay, that got as far as the NFL officially. And in each case, they, well, the first 2 they said, they wouldn't even hear it. The third time they did hear it and took a vote, okay, and the Maroons lost. There were only 2 teams out of the NFL teams that voted in Maroons' favor, and that was to open it up and look at it, not to necessarily give them the championship back. But so they 3 strikes and you're out, I guess. I don't know, but not according to the Pottsville fans, and according to the Historical Society here in Pottsville and many of the businessmen and dignitaries, they're still as pumped up about getting that championship back as they were back when it was discovered in the 40s by a gentleman named Joe Zackel. Okay.
Yeah. Now, are you from the Pottsville area? Is that your connection? Why you wrote about the book?
I'm sorry.
I said, are you from the Pottsville area? Is that what
I'm
was your
a
motivation to write the book?
couple miles away in Minersville.
Okay. And of course, their field was called Minersville Park, so that was
Yeah, yeah, it was.
sort of a shared team
I
there.
I actually our senior year, my high school team played its baseball games in that stadium, and
Oh,
then
really?
that was the last year anything was held there. They tore it down, and now it's a strip mall.
Yeah, I had lunch at a very nice little pizza joint there. They
Yeah,
claimed it was
it's
on the
very
50-yard
awesome.
line.
Palermo's, it's good.
Right. Yes, it was very, very good. Highly recommend it. Very
Good
nice
food.
slice of pie there. That's for sure. Yeah.
And that restaurant supposedly was on the 50-yard line.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And I
How
didn't know
true
that going in. I came into town early that day and met a bunch of historians that were taking tours of, various things, mostly football things, PFRA members and vintage collectors. We went around and did that. And that's where I met them out when I came from Erie that day. And they told me, I said, okay,
I
where are we going next to see some history? And they said, well, you're here. You're on the 50-yard line. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah,
I
that's
meant
pretty
to
cool.
ask you, did your group tour the England Brewery?
Yes, I was not there yet, but they toured it right after the Historical Society. So they did those in the morning, then broke for lunch when I met them, and then we went, of course, Minersville Park, and then they ended up we went to Yorkville Fire Department,
Oh, did
and then they went to one of the, I think Coaldale's Field, and it's like a park now. I didn't attend that because I was at the banquet with you, and then they went up to Jim Thorpe and
hmm
saw the interment and some of the statue area
Yeah,
up there.
there's a lot of history, both football and otherwise, in the county. But
Yeah.
England Brewery, 1829, the oldest brewery. And most people that come into town make sure they take that tour.
Yeah, I was kind of
Because at
upset
the end of the tour,
I didn't get there early
that's
enough to
a
get
big
that.
drink.
You're right. But you have another mission besides Pottsville, another football mission. I found very interesting when we were talking back there on August 16th, and that's a gentleman that you have met and talked to that you feel should maybe have a gold jacket of his own. Maybe you could tell us about him.
Yes, it's been my latest mission. Okay, I haven't written anything for a while. My last book was about a young man from Minersville by the name of Billy Ulmer, who was killed playing a football game at the Minersville Stadium.
Hmm.
And he got a broken neck and died. And I wrote the book, more or less to memorialize him because I think this was way back in the 1940s, 45. And
Hmm.
over time, people forget, And
Right.
I
Yeah.
think he deserved a little resurrection, so to speak, of attention because nobody could pay the more uh, price that he paid, by giving his life. And he was a number one in his class, good-looking kid. Everybody loved him. He was an outstanding athlete in every sport. Um,
Hmm.
and that's the last one that I wrote. But yes, this gentleman here is Gary Collins. Okay.
All
Gary
right.
Collins was born in 1940. He just had a birthday last week. He's 85. Uh, he played for a little town out on the western end of Schuylkill County called Williamstown. And over the 4 years of high school, he started in every sport for all 4 years. And he threw shutouts, okay, in baseball constantly with scouts in the stand, and he scored his 1,000 points in basketball. And then, of course, in football, he was unstoppable, such that when he graduated, he had over 80 offers, okay, on the table.
Wow.
Literally every college practically in Pennsylvania, and then, you know, USC in California and Michigan and Indiana and, you know, all over. He ended up choosing University of Maryland, and he went there. And in those days, freshmen weren't allowed to play, okay, varsity. So his freshman year, he just played on the freshman team, and they had a very good record. They won almost all of their games, and he started to shine. But the next year, his sophomore year, was basically his rookie year, okay? And of course, he nailed down the wide receiver spot and ended up leading the NFL that year in touchdown receptions, okay, in his rookie year. And then the next year, 1964, he led them to the NFL championship. They didn't call it the Super Bowl then, but it was the NFL championship. And they played the Baltimore Colts, okay, who had Lenny Moore, Johnny Unitas, Gino Marchetti, okay. I mean, they were favored, of course, you know, heavily favored. Cleveland played them, but keep in mind, Cleveland had a guy named Jim Brown. And
I hear he might have been pretty good.
yeah, he was pretty good. And Paul Warfield, who's in the Hall of Fame, and Ernie Nevers, okay, who was a bruising running back. So the end of the first half, nothing tie. They walk off the field, and the coach in Cleveland's locker room says, "Hey, what the heck do we have to do to win this game?" You know. And Collins stood up and says, "Just give me the damn ball." Okay, that's a quote. And they came out the second half, and Gary ends up catching 3 touchdown passes. Okay.
Wow.
And scoring the only touchdowns, okay, in the game. The others were field goals or extra points for a 27-0 shutout of the Baltimore Colts, and they win the National Football League championship. And Gary is voted MVP and given a brand new Corvette to top it off, okay? So over the ensuing years that he played, which was 10 with Cleveland, they went to 4 NFL championships, you know, quite a bit of it thanks to him, not to make little of Jim Brown either, okay? But what I did was started to go into the research, okay? And the committee that picks people for the Hall of Fame are very concerned about stats, okay? Numbers. And what I found out just kind of knocked my socks off, because Gary Collins, when you take his catches and how many touchdowns he made, okay, his catch to touchdown ratio, it was better than Paul Warfield, who was in the Hall of Fame, okay. It was better than Lance Rensel, who was in the Hall of Fame, okay. He just, you know, he just did so many great things. 4 seasons, he had double-figure receptions for TDs. I have in the, you know, in a letter to go to the Hall of Fame, much more in the way of statistics, but I don't want to, you know, overkill it or bore people. but his statistics, they just make everybody else look. I mean, they even compared him to Jerry Rice, okay?
Yeah, but just to prove your point, I mean, just looking what Pro Football Reference I have is up on the screen right now. He had 331 receptions in his 10 years. Okay, so that's about 33 a year. He
Mm-hmm.
had 70 touchdowns off those
And
331.
fall back, but go ahead.
Yeah, so that's 7 touchdowns a year, 33 out of 33 catches a year on average. And like you said, we had four that were double digits. So, and
So
not
his
all together,
ratio,
not all early. He had one early in his career and he had some in the middle and some near the end. So it's
yeah,
pretty steady career.
his ratio was 4.7. Every 4.7 catches ended in a touchdown. Okay.
Wow.
Now, Jerry Rice, just so I get it right, and don't get me wrong, the name Jerry Rice and greatness will always go together. And there was nobody like him. Okay.
Right.
But numbers are numbers. Okay. And where is Mr. Jerry Rice? Yeah. He had a 7.8 ratio compared to
So
4.7.
it's almost double
Okay. Gary Collins
yeah.
had 2 fumbles his entire career.
Jeez.
Jerry Rice had 23 fumbles.
Amazing.
Uh, he was blocked once. That's Gary Collins because he had double duty. He was also the punter, okay? And he led the NFL in punting for 17 years before his record was broken, okay? And as I said, I could go on and on. Just one more that I think is very telling, should be to the Hall of Fame, okay? During the 1960s, there are only 4 receivers that are in the Hall of Fame, okay? Paul Warfield, okay? His touchdown catch to touchdown ratio is 5.3. Advantage College, right?
Yeah, right.
4.7. Lance Allworth, the speedster, okay?
Yeah, pretty good guy
You probably saw
catching
him
the
play.
ball.
I saw
Yeah.
him play, okay? His is 6.3. His
Okay.
rate,
Wow.
okay? Fred Bolitnikov, him I liked. I used to like to watch the Oakland Raiders play, okay?
He's from my hometown. He's from here in Erie.
Yeah, he was a cool guy. I liked him. Anyway, his ratio 7.8
Amazing.
versus
Wow.
4.7. Okay. And the last one, Charlie Joyner. Okay. His ratio is 11.5.
Wow.
Those are the only 4 wide receivers in the Hall of Fame that played in the 60s. And Collins, you know,
Yeah,
big
I think you
when
got
it comes to
some
the
some
statistics.
points there.
So, and also you have to remember, you know, when Collins played, he had Paul Warfield on his team, not the whole 10 years, but for 6 years. You had Jim Brown, okay, and Ernie Davis. So you have to keep in mind that as good as Collins was, they didn't go to him every play, you know.
Right.
Actually, the team's nickname for him was Clutch, okay? Because when they needed a touchdown or when they needed 15 yards, he would get them a touchdown or he'd get them 16 yards and a first down, you know. And
Jeez.
they'd call him Clutch. And sometimes in a game where there would be extremely hot temperatures and the linemen, you know, big and they're sweating like heck and they're, you know, they're getting tired, you know, and they go in the huddle and they would say, hey, AW, help us out here. We got to get back, and sit down and cool off. We're dying out here. AW was all the way because they knew if they got him the ball, there was a good chance he'd score. Okay. And
Wow.
even once Jim Brown was asked who he thought the most clutch player on the team was. And he said, oh, the guy from Maryland, no question.
Wow.
So
Pretty
there's
high
a
regard
lot
from
to
your
back up my
teammates.
argument, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. And you have the guys that you see him play day in and day out, and they have that much confidence in him to, feel that he gets the ball, they're going to score a pretty good chance.
Yeah.
And the stats say that, give him one out of every 5 tries, he's in the end zone.
Yeah.
That's pretty good basis for you to go to the Hall of Fame and ask him for that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think they should. He deserves a hard look. Let me put it that way. And they
I,
take 2 old timers now every year. So he's an old timer. He's
right.
85 now. He's suffering a few health problems. Uh,
I'm sorry to hear that.
and he said, and he and I have talked. I've interviewed him personally, and I know him. He lives in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the sweetest town on earth, as they say. And
Right.
over the phone many times, and then the research. And he's a very humble guy. And he says, uh, I know he said there's been talk about this before, but he said nothing ever came of it. So he said, I wish you well, but he says, I'm not holding my breath. He said, it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter. He said, at Williamstown, at Maryland, and at Cleveland, he said, I did my job. And people know that and they remember me. And that's all that counts, he said.
Yeah. I guess one of the stats I mean, you talked about his punting, but he had a 73-yard punt for his longest. I mean, not too many
Yeah,
punters in the NFL have had 73-yard punts. That's
no, no.
that's a pretty good one. And
Uh,
he backed that up. He had a 71-yard one a couple years after that for his
yeah,
long.
that year that he held the record
Yeah. Phew.
was the one he had the 71 in. And I forgot to mention, but again, this isn't NFL, so, but he played both ways at Maryland. He played defense too.
Yeah,
And
that
one time he
I think
made
you
three
had to
tackles in a
back
row.
then, I believe, right?
Pardon?
I think you had to there in the up through the late 50s. You had to play
Well, I
both
didn't
ways.
have to, but most coaches, yeah, they ran you both ways. And
Yeah.
he once punted uh, to the 6-inch line of the
Phew.
opponent, and then went in and blocked the punt because he was still
Wow.
defense, right? And one of his teammates recovered it for a touchdown, and they won the game. Uh,
Boy, if they would have had the awards of Special Teams Player of the Week, he would have got that a whole bunch of times, huh?
oh, he's in Maryland,
Right.
Hall of Fame. And I forgot to mention that when he did graduate from Maryland, he was a finalist for the Heisman. Okay,
Wow. That's that's big.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Well,
he is in their Hall of Fame. He's in the NFL's All 60s decade, team. Um, there's a lot of awards, that he had.
right.
Just one quick story, okay, that I think will tell you the character of the man. Okay.
Okay.
In their first game as a sophomore, his first game, uh, they were playing West Virginia, at West Virginia, I think. And they beat West Virginia. I don't recall the score exactly. But his outstanding play won him the game ball. It was his first game, okay, as a rookie.
Jeez.
He immediately took the game ball over to the stands and handed it to the mother okay, of a guy who died in preseason practice, okay? He passed out and died from heat prostration. His name was Lyons, his last name, Lyons. And Gary went over and presented her with the ball and said, "This belongs to you." Okay, no,
Wow. That's saying a lot. That does say a lot about his character.
so he had ability, but he also had character too.
Especially for a young man who's probably 19 years old at the time. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I think he was 19 or 20.
Yeah. Whew. Amazing stuff.
So I'm on this train ride now to see if I can get it to go into Canton, and it's an uphill fight. I understand that, but if anybody out there that remembers Gary Collins or is impressed with what I've said, anyone can nominate somebody for the Hall of Fame. Okay, all you gotta do is send a letter in and say, "Hey, you guys missed somebody, a guy named Gary Collins. Give him due consideration this year." It's too late for this year, but I mean, for next year.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that would be some powerful letters. So folks, get those pens to paper and get right into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the NFL, whoever you can. If you're not sure who to write, email me at pigskindispatch@gmail.com and I'll give you some guidance here on who to write, and we'll see if we can help Vince and Mr. Collins to get that bronze bust going in Canton, because I think he very well proved his case here tonight. So, Vincent, we really appreciate you coming on. I want to mention once again your book on the Pottsville Maroons is titled "The Pottsville Maroons and the NFL Stolen Championship of 1925." It's available on Amazon and any other places it's available too?
Mostly on Amazon.
Amazon? Okay.
The original publisher went belly up, so it's kind of hard to get books from them,
Right.
So switch it over to Amazon.
All right. So do that and send those letters in for Mr. Gary Collins that played during the 1960s for the Browns.
And I want to compliment you and your partner on your book, because
thank you.
It's very well done. Very well done. As a matter of fact, I understand more people prefer the hardback, even though it's more expensive than the paperback, okay? Because it's so well done, okay? With the cover and with what's inside of it too. So I wish you lots of luck and success with that, okay?
I thank you, and I think on behalf of Jeff and I think you can tell you that you were one of the inspirations that helped motivate us and help give us information and the motivation to write the book too. So we appreciate that, and enjoyed joining forces with you to telling that story of the Maroons and great 1925 season. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we'll do all we can to help you in your causes, getting some of your books sold and to try to get Mr. Collins in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Have a good night.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.